There comes a moment when every elderly parent feels it, that subtle shift in the relationship with their adult children. One day, you're the authority, the guide, the one they turn to for wisdom. The next, they're sighing at your suggestions, interrupting your stories, or worse, making decisions about your life without consulting you. It's a painful transition that no one prepares you for. After decades of caring for them, sacrificing for them, and putting their needs first, suddenly you find yourself being treated like you're the child, someone who needs managing rather than respecting. Maybe they roll their eyes when you offer advice. Maybe they speak to you in that slow, patronizing tone reserved for someone they believe can't understand. Maybe they make plans that affect you without asking what you want. Or perhaps they simply don't listen anymore, always too busy, too distracted, or too convinced they know better. And it hurts. It hurts more than most elderly parents admit. You might feel tempted to remind them of everything you've done, all the years you put them first. You might want to demand the respect you deserve. But here's the truth. Demanding respect rarely works. In fact, it often pushes your children further away. But what if there was another way? What if you could transform how your adult children see you without arguments, without resentment, and without damaging your relationship? Today, I'm going to share 6 powerful actions you can take when your adult children don't respect you. These aren't just theories, they're proven approaches that have helped thousands of elderly parents restore dignity to their relationships. Some of these might surprise you. Some might even seem counterintuitive at first. But if you stay until the end, you'll discover exactly how to regain your standing as a respected, valued figure in your children's lives. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration. Now let's begin with the most fundamental shift that changes everything. Stop seeking their approval. One of the most devastating mistakes elderly parents make is gradually becoming approval seekers in their children's lives. It happens so subtly you might not even notice it's happening. You start checking with them before making decisions. You hesitate to share your honest opinions. You rearrange your schedule whenever they call. You say yes to requests that inconvenience you because you're afraid of disappointing them. Each small compromise seems harmless, even loving. But there's a painful truth we need to confront. The more desperately you seek your children's approval, the less they respect you. Think about the people you genuinely respect in your own life. Are they the ones who are always trying to please you? Or are they the ones who stand firmly in their own worth, who have clear values and boundaries, who don't need your validation to feel confident in their choices? Respect isn't earned through self-sacrifice. It's earned through self-respect. Take Eleanor, an 82-year-old widow whose relationship with her daughter had deteriorated over the years. Eleanor's daughter would make comments about her mother's home, her appearance, her finances, little criticisms that Eleanor would absorb silently, afraid that pushing back might drive her daughter away. "I just want to keep the peace," Eleanor told me. "At my age, you can't afford to alienate your children." But what Eleanor didn't realize was that her silence wasn't keeping the peace. It was destroying her standing in her daughter's eyes. The more she accepted disrespect, the more her daughter came to see her as someone whose feelings and opinions didn't matter. The turning point came during a Sunday dinner when Eleanor's daughter started criticizing her mother's decision to keep living alone. Instead of nodding along, Eleanor calmly said, "I've thought carefully about where I want to live, and I'm comfortable with my decision. I don't need you to worry about it anymore." Her daughter was stunned. She wasn't used to her mother speaking with such quiet confidence. And something shifted in that moment. A new respect began to form, not because Eleanor demanded it, but because she demonstrated she didn't desperately need it. If your adult children have stopped respecting you, your first step isn't to convince them that you deserve better treatment. It's to stop acting like you need their approval at all. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. It simply means reclaiming your power to make your own choices, voice your own thoughts, and live according to your own values, even when your children disagree. When you stop seeking their approval, something remarkable happens. They stop seeing you as someone who needs to be managed and start seeing you as someone who deserves to be respected. And that changes everything. Respond with dignity, not defensiveness. When an adult child dismisses your opinion, talks over you, or treats you with disrespect, your instinct might be to remind them of their place, to tell them who's still the parent, to list everything you've sacrificed for them over the decades. But here's a truth that will save you years of frustration. You cannot argue someone into respecting you. Think about the last time someone demanded your respect through anger or defensiveness. Did it work? Or did it simply make you want to pull further away? Respect isn't won through arguments. It's earned through the quiet dignity with which you carry yourself, especially when tested. Consider Thomas, a 75-year-old retired professor whose son had developed a habit of interrupting him and dismissing his perspectives with comments like, "That's outdated thinking, Dad," or "The world doesn't work that way anymore." At first, Thomas would get angry. He'd raise his voice, remind his son of his decades of experience, and insist that his views deserved consideration. But these arguments only seemed to confirm his son's belief that his father was becoming inflexible and emotionally reactive in his old age. Then Thomas tried something different. The next time his son interrupted him at a family gathering, instead of getting defensive, Thomas simply fell silent. When there was a natural pause in the conversation, he calmly said, "I'd like to finish my thought now," and continued speaking with the same measured confidence he'd used when lecturing to hundreds of students. He didn't plead for attention. He didn't show anger. He simply carried himself with the dignity of someone who knew his worth didn't depend on his son's validation. The shift was subtle but significant. His son, accustomed to his father's defensive reactions, seemed caught off guard by this quiet confidence. Over time, the interruptions became less frequent. The dismissive comments began to fade. If your children don't respect you, fighting for their approval will only drain your energy and diminish your standing. Instead, respond to disrespect with the calm assurance of someone who doesn't need to prove their worth. When they interrupt you, don't raise your voice. Simply wait, and then continue with, "As I was saying." When they dismiss your ideas, don't defend yourself. Just nod and say, "I've given this considerable thought, and I stand by my perspective." This isn't about being passive or letting disrespect slide. It's about responding in a way that demonstrates your own self-respect. Because when you show that their approval isn't essential to your sense of worth, they'll start seeing you differently. Not as someone desperate for validation, but as someone who commands respect simply through their presence. If you're finding value in these insights, please type dignity in the comments below to let me know you're with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming videos on rebuilding family relationships in your golden years. Develop emotional self-sufficiency. As we age, one of the most dangerous patterns that can develop is emotional dependence on our adult children. After decades of close connection, it's natural to look to them for companionship, validation, and purpose. But the moment they sense that your emotional well-being depends on their attention, something fundamental changes in the relationship. The truth is uncomfortable but essential. People rarely respect those who are emotionally dependent on them. When your happiness visibly rises and falls with your children's attention, when you call too often, when you ask repeatedly when they'll visit next, when you make them responsible for your emotional state, you're not fostering closeness. You're creating pressure that makes them want to pull away. Margaret, a 78-year-old mother of 3, couldn't understand why her children seemed to be avoiding her. She called them daily, left messages expressing how much she missed them, and made comments like, "I've been sitting by the phone waiting to hear from you," or My week is only good if I get to see my children. She thought she was expressing love, but what her children felt was an unbearable weight of responsibility for their mother's happiness. They began screening her calls. Their visits became shorter, filled with glances at watches and early departures. Margaret's breakthrough came through an unexpected friendship with a woman in her building who, despite having children who lived far away, seemed genuinely content. This woman had built a rich life for herself. She volunteered at a community garden, took a watercolor class, and hosted dinner parties for friends. "My children are a joy in my life," she told Margaret, "but they're not my whole life." Inspired, Margaret began to shift her focus. She joined a book club, reconnected with old friends, and found a part-time position at a local library. She still loved her children deeply, but she stopped making them the center of her emotional universe. The change in their response was remarkable. Without the pressure of being responsible for their mother's happiness, her children began calling more often. Their visits lasted longer. They started asking about her projects, her friends, her interests, seeing her as someone with a full life rather than someone waiting by the phone. If your children have pulled away, ask yourself honestly, have you made them feel responsible for your happiness? Are you calling too often? Making them feel guilty for having busy lives? Depending on them to fill the empty spaces in your days? Emotional self-sufficiency is one of the greatest gifts you can give both yourself and your children. When you build a life rich with your own interests, friendships, and purpose, you not only increase your own happiness, you transform how your children see you. They stop seeing you as a responsibility to manage and start seeing you as a whole person to respect. And that makes all the difference. Set clear, calm boundaries. One of the most painful paradoxes of aging is that the more we need respect, the less willing we become to demand it. We worry about creating conflict. We fear estrangement. We tell ourselves that keeping the peace is more important than keeping our dignity. But here's a truth that may be hard to hear. If you allow your adult children to speak to you disrespectfully, make decisions for you without consultation, or dismiss your feelings, they will continue doing it. Not because they're bad people, but because we all treat others the way they've shown us, they're willing to be treated. Setting boundaries doesn't mean creating conflict. It means calmly and clearly establishing how you expect to be treated, then consistently enforcing those expectations. Consider Robert, an 80-year-old widower whose children had fallen into the habit of making decisions about his life without consulting him. They'd rearrange his furniture during visits, throw out belongings they deemed unnecessary, and talk about his future as if he weren't in the room. Robert hated these intrusions but said nothing, afraid that objecting would make him seem difficult or ungrateful for their help. But each boundary crossed left him feeling more powerless, more invisible in his own life. The turning point came when his daughter announced she'd scheduled a meeting with a retirement community, without discussing it with him. Instead of silently accepting this overreach, Robert calmly said, "I appreciate your concern, but decisions about where I live need to include me from the beginning. Please cancel that appointment." His daughter was initially defensive, insisting she was only trying to help. But Robert held firm. "I know your intentions are good, but I need to be treated as a participant in my life, not a spectator. That's non-negotiable for me." Was it uncomfortable? Yes. Did it create some temporary tension? Absolutely. But it also did something vital. It began to restore the natural order of respect in their relationship. If your children have been making decisions without you, speaking to you condescendingly, or otherwise crossing lines, you have not just the right but the responsibility to establish boundaries. Not with anger, not with guilt trips, but with the calm clarity of someone who knows their worth. When they speak over you, I wasn't finished speaking. When they make decisions without you, I need to be consulted on matters that affect my life. When they use a condescending tone, I'd appreciate if you'd speak to me as an adult. And most importantly, when they continue to cross these boundaries, if you can't respect these basic boundaries, I'll need to step away from this conversation until we can interact with mutual respect. The first few times you enforce a boundary, there may be pushback. Your children have grown accustomed to a certain dynamic, and change can feel threatening. But if you remain consistent, firm without being harsh, clear without being angry, something remarkable happens. The relationship begins to rebalance itself. They start seeing you not as someone who will accept whatever treatment they offer, but as someone who values themselves enough to require respect. And gradually, they begin treating you that way too. If you're finding value in these insights, please type boundaries in the comments below to let me know you're with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming videos on navigating family relationships in your senior years. Stop giving without reciprocity. One of the most painful patterns that develops between aging parents and their adult children is the habit of one-sided giving. As parents, giving comes naturally to us. We've spent decades prioritizing our children's needs, solving their problems, and offering support whenever they needed it. But somewhere along the way, something crucial gets lost: the expectation of reciprocity. You keep giving your time, your energy, your resources, your emotional support, even when it's not appreciated, even when it's expected rather than requested, even when the relationship has become completely one-sided. And here's the harsh truth: when you give endlessly to someone who doesn't reciprocate, you don't build love, you build entitlement. Consider James, a 76-year-old father who had spent his retirement years constantly available to his adult children. He babysat on demand, loaned money whenever asked, and dropped everything when they needed help with home projects. But there was no reciprocity. When he needed help moving heavy furniture, or could have used company during a difficult health diagnosis, his children were always too busy. Despite this imbalance, James kept giving, hoping that his generosity would eventually be recognized and returned. But the opposite happened. The more he gave, the more his children seemed to take him for granted. His turning point came after he spent 3 days helping his daughter move, despite his arthritis flaring up painfully. When he mentioned he could use some help with yard work the following weekend, she replied, "Dad, we're really swamped right now. Can't you just hire someone?" In that moment, James realized that his constant availability had taught his children that his needs came last, if they were considered at all. So he made a difficult but necessary change. He didn't stop being generous entirely. He simply started ensuring there was balance in the relationship. When asked for favors, he began saying things like, "I'd be happy to help you move next weekend. And afterward, I could use some help organizing my garage. Would you be able to give me a few hours the following Saturday?" At first, his children seemed surprised by these new expectations. Some even pushed back, accustomed to receiving help without being expected to return it. But over time, something important shifted. They stopped seeing their father as an endless resource to be tapped and started seeing him as someone whose time and energy were valuable as their own. If you found yourself in a one-sided giving relationship with your adult children, it's time to restore balance. This doesn't mean keeping score or becoming transactional. It simply means ensuring that the relationship includes mutual support, mutual consideration, and mutual respect. Start small. When you do something for your children, gently express an expectation of reciprocity. "I'm happy to water your plants while you're away. Perhaps when you get back, you could help me set up my new printer." Be prepared for some resistance initially. Patterns that have developed over years don't change overnight. But stand firm in your worth. Because when you show your children that your generosity isn't unlimited, that you expect to be valued as much as you value them, They will start treating your time, your energy, and ultimately you with far greater respect. Build a life rich with purpose. Perhaps the most powerful way to transform how your adult children see you is to show them, through your actions, not your words, that your life is full, meaningful, and independent of their approval. As we age, it's easy to let our world shrink. Our social circles may narrow, our activities may become more limited, our sense of purpose may diminish. And if we're not careful, our adult children can become the center of our universe, the main source of our interest, our conversation, and our meaning. But here's a fundamental truth about human psychology. People rarely respect those who have nothing in their lives beyond their relationship with them. Think about the elderly people you most admire. Aren't they the ones who maintain their own interests, their own friendships, their own sense of purpose well into their later years? The ones who have stories to tell that don't revolve around their children or grandchildren? The ones who are still growing, still contributing, still fully engaged with life? Consider Helen, an 84-year-old widow whose relationship with her children had become strained. After her husband died, she'd become increasingly focused on her children's lives, calling daily for updates, offering unsolicited advice, and making comments like, "You and the grandkids are all I have now." Her children began to see visits as an obligation rather than a joy. Their calls became less frequent, their time together more perfunctory, and the more they pulled away, the more Helen clung, creating a cycle that left everyone feeling drained. Everything changed when Helen, inspired by a community newsletter, reluctantly attended a local art class. To her surprise, she discovered a talent for watercolors. One class led to another. She joined a senior painting group. She started exhibiting her work at community fairs. Gradually, her conversations with her children shifted. Instead of just asking about their lives, she had her own experiences to share. The techniques she was learning, the people she was meeting, the local gallery that had offered to display her work. Her children's response transformed. They began asking questions about her painting. They showed genuine interest in her projects. One daughter even surprised her by coming to a community exhibition. They no longer saw their mother as someone whose life revolved around them, but as someone with her own passion, her own community, her own sense of fulfillment. If you want your adult children to respect you, show them that you're someone who respects yourself enough to create a life of meaning, regardless of their involvement in it. Join that class you've been curious about. Volunteer for a cause you care about. Nurture friendships with peers who share your interests. Develop skills that challenge and engage you. Find ways to contribute your wisdom to your community. The goal isn't to impress your children or make them feel guilty for not spending more time with you. The goal is to build a life so genuinely fulfilling that their respect comes naturally. Not because you need it, but because you've earned it through the dignity and purpose with which you live each day. When they see that you're thriving independently of their attention, they'll stop seeing you as someone to manage and start seeing you as someone to admire. And that shift in perception changes everything. If you're finding value in these insights, please type "purpose" in the comments section below to let me know you're with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our upcoming videos on finding meaning and connection in your senior years. The journey from being disregarded to being deeply respected by your adult children isn't about confrontation. It's not about demanding the recognition you deserve or reminding them of everything you've sacrificed. It's about a deeper transformation, one that begins not with how they see you, but with how you see yourself. When you stop seeking their approval and start standing firmly in your own worth. When you respond to disrespect with dignity rather than defensiveness. When you develop emotional self-sufficiency instead of dependence. When you set clear boundaries about how you expect to be treated. When you ensure there's reciprocity in your giving. and when you build a life rich with purpose independent of their attention, something profound shifts. Your children stop seeing you as someone to manage and start seeing you as someone to respect, not out of obligation, but out of genuine admiration for the person you continue to be. This transformation rarely happens overnight. Patterns established over years take time to change. There may be resistance. There may be discomfort. There may be moments when it feels easier to slip back into old dynamics. But if you stay consistent, honoring your own worth even when others don't yet see it, the relationship will gradually rebalance itself. The respect that once seemed lost will begin to return, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied the kind of quiet dignity that naturally commands it. Remember, it's never too late to change how others see you by changing how you see yourself. Your worth doesn't diminish with age. It deepens. Your voice doesn't become less important. It becomes more valuable. And the respect you deserve doesn't fade with the years. It only becomes more rightfully yours. Thank you for joining me today. If you found value in this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from these insights. In the comments below, I'd love to hear which of these 6 actions resonated most strongly with you, or any questions you might have about rebuilding respect in your relationship with your adult children. Until next time, remember, the greatest gift you can give your children isn't your sacrifice. It's the example of someone who lives with dignity, purpose, and unwavering self-respect at every age.